Today, we're diving into what it really takes to reach the absolute highest levels of human performance. For decades, we've been told a very specific story about how to become the best. But in this explainer, we're going to look at a huge scientific review that pretty much flips that conventional wisdom on its head. You've heard this a million times, right? It's the story of prodigies like Mozart or Tiger Woods. The idea is that you have to get a head start, go all in on one thing, and that gives you this huge advantage that no one else can catch up to. And you know what? This is the philosophy that drives so many elite schools, music conservatories, and sports academies all over the world. The whole model is built on one core assumption, that if you're a star when you're young, you'll be a star when you're an adult. But has anyone ever really tested that idea among the absolute best of the best? Well, a massive new review finally gives us a very clear, and for a lot of people, a really surprising answer. So what we're looking at today comes from a comprehensive review by Güllich and his colleagues published in the top-tier journal Science. And this isn't just some small study. They synthesized data on more than 34,000 elite performers. We're talking Nobel laureates, Olympic champions, world-class chess players, the whole shebang. This gives us one of the most solid views on this topic we've ever had. Here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the specialization myth. Then we'll get into the study's core findings about who actually makes it to the top. After that, we'll explore why these surprising patterns happen. And finally, what it all means for how we should think about developing talent. So the traditional view, and look, it's backed by a lot of research on younger, sub-elite performers, is that being good early and practicing one thing a ton is how you get to the top. This has led to talent programs that basically find the best kids and just double down on their training. But the big question, the one this paper asks, is does that model actually work when you look at the absolute peak of adult performance? And that brings us to the first huge finding from this review. It answers a really simple but profound question. Are the top performers in youth competitions the same people who become the champions as adults? The answer is a huge blow to that old specialization model. All right, take a look at this data. It's straight from the paper. The blue part of the bar shows the people who were top performers at both the junior and senior levels. The yellow part shows those who were only top performers at one stage. As you can see, whether it's athletics, chess, or academia, the overlap is tiny. For example, only 13% of junior international track and field champions go on to become senior international champions. So the big takeaway here is just, wow. Across all these different fields, the top junior performers and the top senior performers are almost 90% different people. Think about that. They aren't one group moving up the ladder. They are two almost completely separate groups. Most of the people who reach the absolute peak were not the best when they were young. Okay, so if the future world champs aren't the junior world champs, then what does their journey look like? Well, this leads to the second major finding. It's this amazing contrast between the developmental paths of the people who become truly world-class and those who are just a step below. This graph tells the story perfectly. The dashed blue line, that represents your national class athletes or Nobel Prize nominees, still incredibly successful, but not the absolute top. You can see they have this really fast, early progress. But now look at the solid yellow line. These are your world-class athletes, your Nobel laureates. Their path starts out slower, at a lower performance level, but eventually they cross over and reach a much higher peak. And the conclusion from this is just completely counterintuitive. When you're looking at the very, very top performers, the ones who reach the absolute peak often have a slower, more gradual start than the folks who peak just below them. Getting better, faster, early on is not a sign of a higher ceiling later. So if their development paths are so different, it kind of makes sense that the things that predict success at each stage would be different too, right? Well, the third key finding is that the predictors for junior success are not just different, they're actually the opposite of what predicts senior world-class success. This bar chart from the review's meta-analysis on athletes makes it crystal clear. For junior performers, starting younger and getting into elite programs earlier predicts better performance. See those blue bars pointing to the left? But for senior world-class performers, it's the opposite. Starting older and getting into those programs later is linked to higher performance. That's the yellow bars pointing right. And you see the exact same reversal for how much they practice. Let's just lay this out in a simple table to make it obvious. The best junior performers, they tend to start younger, they practice their main sport a ton, and they don't do much else. Now, the senior world-class performers, when you compare them to their national-level peers, they actually started their main discipline later, they practiced it less in their early years, and, this is crucial, they spent way more time practicing other sports or activities. So far, we've covered the what. We've seen that world-class performers are a different group of people who take a slower, more diverse path. Now we've got to ask why. Why does this happen? The researchers suggest three main hypotheses, and they're not mutually exclusive. The researchers offer three key ideas for why this slower, more diverse path leads to greater success in the long run. They call them the search and match hypothesis, the enhanced learning capital hypothesis, and the limited risks hypothesis. So the first idea, search and match, is pretty intuitive. By trying out different activities, a person has a much better chance of finding the one thing that's a perfect fit for their unique talents and what they love to do. And finding that perfect match gives them a much stronger foundation to build on for the long haul. The second idea is what they call enhanced learning capital. The thinking here is that by having a wide range of learning experiences, you're building a broader mental toolkit. It helps you think more flexibly, see patterns in different situations, and just be more adaptable. This makes you a better learner for life, so when you do specialize, you can keep getting better for a lot longer. And finally, the limited risks hypothesis is just good old-fashioned common sense. Going all in on one thing from a young age is risky. You can burn out psychologically, you can get overuse injuries physically, or you can just stop enjoying it. Following a more diverse path helps reduce all those risks, which means you're more likely to have a career that's long and healthy enough to actually reach your full potential. The fact that these patterns show up across so many different fields, from science to sports, is huge. It really forces us to take a hard look at how we find and nurture talented people in our schools and training programs. So what are the big take-home messages here? First, being a star early on is a really bad predictor of long-term, world-class success. Because of that, picking people for elite programs has to involve more than just looking at who's winning right now. The evidence is overwhelming. We should be encouraging kids to try multiple things for several years before they even think about specializing. I mean, the data shows future world-class athletes and Nobel laureates were involved in about 2 extra disciplines on average. And finally, we need to judge talent programs not by how many junior trophies they win, but by the long-term success their people achieve. This research really leaves us with a critical question to think about. So many of our systems, in school, in sports, in the arts, are set up to reward early specialization and quick wins. In light of all this evidence, how do we start building new systems that actually encourage the patience, the diversity, and the slower development that are the real ingredients for reaching the top of the world?